It was one of those days when the world seemed a little heavier than usual. The relentless rain fell from the sky, soaking everything in its path, and Sarah stood at the bus stop, her shoulders hunched against the cold wind. She had just finished a long shift at the diner, exhausted, barely making enough to scrape by. Her hands trembled as she pulled her jacket tighter, trying to shield herself from the biting chill. She was used to these moments of feeling small, insignificant, as if the weight of the world was too much for her to carry. She had missed the last bus, and the next one wouldn't come for another 20 minutes. As she stood there, watching the droplets race each other down the glass of the bus shelter, Sarah couldn't help but think about how much she had already given. All her energy, all her dreams, yet it felt like nothing was ever enough. She had no one to turn to, no one to help carry her burden. The loneliness of it all wrapped around her, and for a moment, it felt like she might drown in the despair that came with it. And then, as if the universe had heard her silent cry, a sleek black car pulled up beside her. The window rolled down slowly, and she could barely make out the face of the man inside. He smiled, a warm, genuine smile that seemed to cut through the storm. "Would you like a ride?" he asked, his voice smooth and comforting, like a lifeline thrown into the stormy sea. For a brief moment, Sarah hesitated. She had always been taught to be cautious, to never accept rides from strangers. But something about the man's eyes, the way they sparkled with kindness, told her that this wasn't a trap. She nodded, her heart pounding in her chest, not sure what was driving her to trust this stranger but feeling, for the first time in a long while, like she deserved a moment of kindness. As she climbed into the car, her wet clothes leaving small puddles on the seat, she felt an odd sense of relief. The warmth from the heater filled the car, and for a moment, she allowed herself to forget about the storm outside, and the storm inside her heart. The man, who introduced himself as David, started talking to her with an ease that was almost disarming. They spoke about trivial things at first, the weather, traffic, the usual small talk, but then, somehow, the conversation drifted to more personal territories. Sarah found herself telling him about her life, the struggles, the loneliness, how every day felt like an uphill battle, and yet she kept going. She shared her fears, the ones that kept her up at night, the ones that made her feel like she was always falling just a little too short. There was a vulnerability in her voice that she hadn't shared with anyone in years, but David just listened. He didn't judge, didn't offer solutions or dismiss her feelings. He just listened, and for once, Sarah didn't feel alone. His silent empathy wrapped around her like a blanket, soothing the rawness she had carried for so long. By the time they reached her neighborhood, she didn't want to get out of the car. But when she did, David handed her his card. "Call me if you ever need anything," he said, his voice soft but filled with sincerity. "Whether it's a job, a friend, or just someone to talk to, I'm here." Sarah stood there, staring at the card, unsure if she should believe what had just happened. She had never met anyone like him before, someone who cared without expecting anything in return. A part of her didn't think she deserved this kindness, but deep down, another part of her felt like this could be the turning point she had been waiting for. For the next few weeks, life returned to its usual rhythm. The days were long, the nights even longer. But that card, David's offer of help, kept haunting her thoughts. Could someone really care that much? Could someone really help her change her life? Then one day, while she was waiting on a table at the diner, she overheard a conversation between two regulars. One of them mentioned an opening at a prestigious marketing firm. The job sounded perfect, everything Sarah had ever dreamed of. But who would hire someone like her, a waitress with no formal education, no connections, just the clothes on her back and the weight of her failures dragging her down? The next morning, the card was still there, tucked into her wallet, as if waiting for her to make a decision. With trembling hands, she dialed the number. She left a message, not sure what she was even saying, but just hoping that this could be the chance she had been praying for. To her shock, David called back just a few hours later. He remembered her. He remembered her story. and he asked her to come in for an interview. When Sarah walked into the office, she felt like a fish out of water. Everything was so polished, so professional. The scent of fresh coffee lingered in the air, and the bright lights above her made everything feel surreal. But when she saw David sitting behind the desk, she felt a strange calm. He greeted her with the same warmth that had made her feel safe in his car that rainy night. The interview was straightforward. Sarah spoke about her experiences, her willingness to learn, and the passion she had for something better. And when David spoke, it wasn't about qualifications or resumes. It was about the fire she had inside her, the kind of person she was, the potential he saw in her. In that moment, Sarah realized that this wasn't just about a job, it was about a man who believed in people, even when they didn't believe in themselves. Weeks later, Sarah was sitting at her new desk, staring at the view from the office window. She couldn't believe how much her life had changed. A single act of kindness, one moment of genuine care, had altered the course of her future. But it wasn't just the job that had changed her life. It was the realization that there was still goodness in the world, that there were people who saw you for who you could be, not just who you were. And as the days went by, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that she needed to pay it forward. Inspired by David's generosity, she started looking for small ways to make a difference. She saw a woman on the street with a flat tire and offered to help. She donated her old clothes to a shelter, and she made sure to smile at strangers, knowing that sometimes a small gesture could make a world of difference. One rainy afternoon, as she was walking to work, she spotted a woman standing at a bus stop, drenched by the downpour. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. Without thinking, she pulled over and offered her a ride. And just like that, the kindness chain continued, each act flowing effortlessly into the next. What started as one small moment of human connection had grown into something bigger, something that reminded them all of the simple, profound power of kindness. Each day, Sarah couldn't help but smile, knowing that life had a funny way of surprising you. It only took one person, one act of kindness, to change everything. And she was going to make sure it didn't stop with her.